My parents always favored my sister and blamed me, so I decided to. I was paying my parents' bills while eating instant noodles in a dark studio apartment. And still, my sister was their pride. A plastic fork scraped the bottom of the cup, the noodles already soggy and flavorless. The only light in the apartment came from the flickering street lamp outside her window, barely illuminating the thrifted furniture and worn carpet. Claire sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop open beside her, bank app blinking a confirmation message. $5,000 transferred to Thomas Mitchell. Again. She closed the screen. No thank you. No call. No message. Just silence. It had been this way for years. Sacrifice in the shadows while Emily shone effortlessly in the spotlight. Claire leaned against the cold wall and let her eyes drift toward the single-framed photo above her desk. Emily was front and center. 7 years old, holding a trophy from the school talent show. Their parents beamed beside her, arms wrapped tight around their golden girl. Off to the right, half cut out of the frame, Claire stood holding a science medal she'd won the same day. No one had remembered to take her solo picture. The image used to sting. Now it just confirmed what she already knew. They had always seen what they wanted to see. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, Claire had been the responsible one, the steady one. While Emily threw tantrums and broke things, Claire swept up the glass. While Emily begged for piano lessons and got them, Claire was told they couldn't afford extra things. Even when Claire won a scholarship, their mom said, "We're proud, sweetie, but Emily's really finding herself right now. Let's focus on encouraging her." Every family gathering, every photo, every dinner conversation revolved around Emily's art projects or her deep sensitivity. Claire's work promotion, mentioned in passing. Her college graduation, skipped because Emily had a gallery showing. Claire rubbed her eyes. Her job at the marketing firm paid decently, enough to keep the bills covered, barely. After rent, student loans, and the monthly transfer to her parents, what remained couldn't buy peace of mind. Yet she kept sending the money, thinking maybe, just maybe, this would be the month they'd ask how she was doing. Instead, Emily posted photos from a brunch she didn't pay for and tagged their mom in a story. Best support system in the world? Claire had seen it an hour ago. She hadn't even been invited. She got up and moved toward the tiny kitchen. A past-due electric bill stuck to the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a broken heart. Beside it, a reminder. Call landlord about leaky pipe. Beneath it, an unopened envelope from the health insurance company. She didn't have the emotional energy to open either. In the corner of her bookshelf, wedged between dusty paperbacks, she found the old family album she hadn't opened in years. The spine cracked when she opened it. Page after page. Christmas mornings, Halloween costumes, birthday cakes. Mostly Emily, mostly smiling, usually surrounded by family. Claire was often there too. Slightly out of focus, slightly apart. Never the centerpiece. Then she found it. The photo. Emily on stage during a school recital. All eyes on her. Claire stood off stage, hands folded, smile careful, watching. She touched the image, thumb grazing the edge of her younger self. Maybe she'd always hoped that being quiet, dependable, and useful would earn her a place in their hearts. Maybe she'd been wrong. Her phone buzzed. A notification from her bank again. Balance updated. Remaining $173.22. She pressed the photo flat, staring at the faces that had once meant everything. Maybe it's time they noticed. I sent them $200 anonymously, and they thanked Emily for it. The first time Claire noticed something was off, it was in her mother's voice. Carol Mitchell never said she was struggling, but the signs were there. Strained laughter on the phone, more clipped coupons on the kitchen counter when Claire visited. Generic brand everything stacked in the pantry instead of the usual name brands. Her father, Thomas, winced more often when standing up, rubbing his back like it had been carrying more than weight lately. Claire didn't ask. She just acted. She set up an automatic bank transfer. $200 scheduled to arrive mid-month, just before the bills were due. No name attached, just the digits routing quietly from her account to theirs. It felt good, in a way. Purposeful. She didn't need the recognition, she told herself that. She only wanted to ease their burden a little. When her phone lit up that evening with a family group text, her stomach twisted. Mom, you'll never believe what your sister did. A deposit showed up just in time. Emily, you are a blessing. Dad, can't thank you enough, sweetheart. You're helping us more than you know. Claire stared at the screen, heart caught somewhere between amusement and sadness. Emily, ever expressive, responded with a series of modest emojis. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Never confirming, never denying. That night, Claire lay awake on her thin mattress, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, lazy circles. Maybe it was just a mistake, a temporary misunderstanding. They'd figure it out eventually and laugh about it over coffee. They didn't. By the third transfer, the narrative was set. Emily was the generous daughter who quietly swooped in to help without being asked. The family soaked it up. Claire stayed silent. It was easier than explaining. Then came the dinner. Claire hadn't planned to attend, but Emily insisted she come. It's just a little get-together. Nothing dramatic, her sister chirped. Dad's grilling. You love his ribs, remember? She did. It was enough. She arrived wearing a thrifted blouse and jeans, hair tied back, hands dry from skipping moisturizer to save a few bucks. The Mitchells' home looked the same as ever. Overgrown ivy near the porch, wind chimes at the kitchen window, and laughter floating from the backyard. The table was set with checkered cloth, paper plates, and mismatched chairs dragged from inside. The mood was warm, casual. Everyone looked comfortable. Claire mostly watched. Between bites of corn on the cob, her mother leaned in and said, Emily's been such a gift to this family. You've really grown into someone special. Claire smiled faintly, her fork pausing midair. Emily sipped lemonade and glanced away. The real blow came when Thomas raised his glass. His back was still stiff, she noticed, but his voice was proud and loud. To our Emily, he said, his tone thick with emotion. Some daughters brag, some daughters take. But ours gives without asking. She saved us. Quietly, gracefully. That's true love. The table erupted in applause. Even Aunt Judy clapped, and she rarely acknowledged anyone unless they brought pie. Claire's face burned, but she forced a sip of water, held her expression steady. Her fingers curled under the table, nails pressing into her skin until they left crescents. The applause faded. The conversation resumed. No one noticed that she hadn't clapped. She glanced across the table. Emily was smiling. Not nervously, not uncomfortably, just smiling and saying nothing. On my birthday, my sister called to tell me all about hers. Claire woke up to the sound of rain tapping the window pane, the sky outside a pale, unfeeling gray. April in Ohio had never been kind, but today the weather matched her expectations. She reached for her phone. No missed calls, no texts. The date glared at her from the lock screen. Saturday, April 15th, her 29th birthday. She stared at the screen a moment longer, then tossed it onto the blanket beside her. Maybe they were just busy. Maybe brunch was running long. Maybe they'd call at noon. She showered, made toast, and sat at the edge of her bed, eating over a plate balanced on her lap. The apartment was silent, save for the dull buzz of the fridge. She kept glancing at her phone. 8:42 a.m., 10:13, 12:26 p.m. Nothing. By mid-afternoon, the silence had curdled into a quiet ache. She checked her emails. Ads, spam, a few company memos. Facebook reminded her of a memory from 5 years ago. A photo of her holding a cupcake, standing next to Emily in the same kitchen that no longer felt like home. Claire looked younger, brighter, hopeful. Her phone buzzed. Emily. Claire hesitated, then answered. Hey. Emily's voice was bubbly, cheerful, completely oblivious. So I just finished picking out my birthday dress. It's this gorgeous lavender wrap. Makes my eyes pop. You have to see it. Claire blinked. That's great, she said flatly. I'm thinking garden party vibe this year. You know, string lights, live music, maybe even a little painting station, just for fun. Claire forced a breath. Emily. It's my birthday today. Silence. Then a startled exhale. Oh, wow. Wait, seriously? God, I totally forgot. This week has been insane. You know how it is? Planning stuff makes my brain all scrambled. Claire didn't respond. Anyway, happy birthday, Emily said too brightly. You doing anything fun? Claire lied. Just something small later. Cool. I'll call you next week. Gotta run. Love ya. The line went dead before Claire could answer. She set the phone down, careful not to throw it. A can of chicken noodle soup sat untouched on the counter. She opened it, dumped it into a pot, stirred while the heat rose. She didn't bother seasoning it, didn't even wait for it to boil. She poured it into a chipped bowl, sat down and ate in silence. At 6:12 p.m., her phone finally lit up again. Ethan. Happy birthday, Claire. Thinking of you. Hope you're being kind to yourself today. She smiled faintly, then put the phone face down. A few minutes later, her mom forwarded a meme. Something about dogs in party hats. No message, no context. Claire opened her notes app and typed, "Do you even see me?" She stared at the words. Her thumb hovered over the send button. Then, slowly, she deleted the message, letter by letter. After washing her bowl, she sat on the floor with her laptop and logged into her bank account. Her fingers moved mechanically. Edit transfer amount? $1,000. Schedule, monthly. Date? 15th. She hit confirm. The screen blinked, and with it, something inside her faded. Quiet, imperceptible. Duty had replaced dignity. Again. I gave up my gym membership, skipped lunch for a week. And they thought Emily paid the electricity. Claire stood in the grocery aisle with a calculator app open on her phone, the screen cracked but functional. A bag of rice in one hand, a can of beans in the other. She scanned the prices, then mentally tallied her remaining food stamps, coupons, and pennies of breathing room. The total for the month's meals, $26.37. She placed the cheapest options in her basket and skipped past the fresh produce entirely. That morning, she'd canceled her gym membership. $45 saved. A small win, a bigger loss. The gym had been her only routine not tied to work or duty, the only time she felt her body existed for herself. On the way out, her phone buzzed. Ethan, have you eaten today? She smiled at the text, not because it made her feel better, but because it was the only genuine question anyone had asked her in weeks. She didn't answer right away. She didn't know how to say, lunch was air. Dinner will be rice. Back home, she microwaved a portion, steam curling from a chipped bowl. She stared at the blank wall across from her bed, where she used to hang art prints she loved. She'd sold most of them on Facebook Marketplace 2 months ago to cover a rent shortfall. The transfer notification pinged in her inbox just as she finished eating. $1,000 sent to Thomas Mitchell, her 4th month in a row. She waited. Silence. Then her phone buzzed again. This time, the family group chat. Carol. Blessed beyond words. We have the most selfless daughter. Thomas. Emily, we are in awe of your heart. Thank you for keeping this family strong. Emily. Claire stared at the screen, stomach turning in a way the beans hadn't caused. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, the weight of their misunderstanding pressing down like wet cement. Later that night, she opened her banking app again, just to double-check. $173.82 left. It had to last 10 more days. The next morning, her landlord knocked. Claire opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie 3 years too old. Just letting you know, he said, scratching the back of his neck. Rent's going up $50 next month. Inflation and all. Claire nodded, smiled faintly, and closed the door before her voice cracked. $50. That was 7 bags of rice. She sat down on the floor and leaned against the wall. Her knees ached from exhaustion, her chest from something deeper. She scrolled aimlessly through old emails, searching for something. Anything that didn't make her feel like a shadow. That's when she found it. Subject: graduation. Congratulations, Claire Mitchell, from Advisor, OSU Honors Program. Body: you were born to lead. Don't forget that. She read it 3 times. Claire closed her laptop, hugged her knees to her chest, and whispered to no one, "Then why am I always behind?" My parents turned the living room into an Emily gallery. I paid the mortgage. Claire stood just inside the doorway of her childhood home, the scent of roast chicken thick in the air, the faint hum of a jazz playlist drifting from the kitchen speaker. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The living room, once cluttered with old family photos and lopsided school crafts, had transformed. The walls were freshly painted a soft ivory, and in place of the clutter stood carefully mounted canvases. Abstract swirls, pastel women with vacant eyes, dramatic ink splatters, each signed in the bottom corner. E.M. A printed card on a side table read, "Emily Mitchell, Private Collection." Claire blinked. Track lighting had been installed, angled to cast soft glows onto each piece. One spotlight flickered slightly over a portrait titled "The Wounded Muse," a blurry pink smear with streaks of crimson. Her mother had placed fresh flowers beside it. Carol appeared beside her, carrying a tray of lemonade glasses. "She's blossoming, isn't she?" she said with a dreamy smile. "Thomas even helped install the lights. We call this the Emily Corner." Claire managed a tight nod. "Looks nice." Emily entered, hair pulled into a low bun, fingers smudged with blue paint as if to remind the room of her perpetual creativity. "I brought a new one," she said, holding up a canvas still wet at the edges. "It's about emotional expansion." Everyone gathered. Everyone applauded. Claire stood quietly near the kitchen entrance, already reaching for plates to set the table. She was halfway through folding napkins when Thomas clapped her on the shoulder. "Glad you're here, kiddo," he said warmly, not looking her in the eyes. "Can you take the chicken out in 5? Claire nodded again. Dinner was lively. The wine flowed. Conversation danced from Emily's newest gallery submission to her plans for a collaborative mural downtown. At one point, Claire tried to chime in. "My team at work just got approved for a regional campaign. They gave me the lead strategist role." "That's nice," Carol said without looking up. "Emily, do you think you'll paint in oils again soon? I loved that phase of yours." Claire bit the inside of her cheek and returned to cutting her food. Later that evening, she sat quietly near the back door, letting the cold air slip through the screen. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan, you deserve more." She didn't respond. She just stared at the screen, heart pulled between gratitude and grief. Thomas called from the living room. "Emily's the rock of this family, always so tuned in to what we need." Carol laughed. "She's got vision. She's our lighthouse." Claire stood, gathered empty plates, and carried them to the sink. When she got home, she opened her laptop, rubbed her temples, and checked her inbox. One unread email from the utility company. Subject: payment due. 48 hours. Remaining amount, $241.07. Current balance, $73.12. She stared at the numbers. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her wallet. The screen went dim, but the weight stayed. When I hit $5,000 a month, I could no longer afford shampoo. But Emily got a standing ovation. The bathroom light in Claire's apartment buzzed faintly as she poured the last of a generic brand conditioner into her palm, watered it down, and raked it through her hair. She squeezed the tube until it collapsed like a crushed can. The shampoo had run out a week ago. She told herself her hair didn't look that greasy in a bun. She pulled on the only pair of flats she hadn't worn through yet, black, with a worn heel and a peeling toe, and stepped out into the rain. The soles soaked through on her way to the train station, cold water squishing beneath her feet with every step. She didn't turn back. It was family dinner night. Her transfer had cleared that morning. $5,000. Enough to cover the mounting hospital bills from Thomas's recent fall. Enough to help them breathe again. Enough to ensure they wouldn't lose the house. It left Claire with $19.48 in her checking account. The Mitchell house was glowing when she arrived. Lanterns hung from the backyard trees, tables were covered in cloth, and chairs had been borrowed from neighbors to accommodate the dozen extended relatives milling about. Inside, the air was thick with food, laughter, and the warm scent of Carol's famous lasagna. Claire stepped in unnoticed and drifted toward the kitchen, where she unpacked disposable cutlery from a grocery bag she'd brought at the last minute, just to feel useful. "Claire, sweetheart," Aunt Carol said as she brushed past her, "would you hand out napkins?" "Thanks." In the living room, a slideshow of Emily's art projects played on the television. Emily stood by the fireplace, cheeks flushed with praise. Guests swarmed her, asking about techniques, commissions, inspirations. "She's amazing," Grandma June whispered to Thomas. "And still managing to help support you both financially? What a heart." Claire froze mid-step. She looked down at the stack of napkins in her hands. One slipped and floated to the ground. Uncle Frank raised a plastic cup. "To Emily," he said. "The artist with a soul, a backbone, and a bank account to match." Laughter, applause. Even Grandma June stood to clap. Claire forced a smile as her fingers curled around the edge of her chair. The fabric frayed beneath her nails. The voices blurred around her, blending into a tide of admiration she'd never been allowed to touch. She opened her mouth. Carol turned to her with a soft, dismissive smile. "Let Emily have her moment, Claire." "She deserves it." Claire closed her mouth. The chair beneath her creaked as her grip tightened. No one noticed. After dinner, she slipped away to the edge of the porch, the cold biting into her shoulders. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Ethan. "Claire, I need to ask you something. Are you okay?" She stared at the message for a long time, eyes stinging, not from the wind. She didn't know how to answer. On my birthday, no one called. But they were planning Emily's celebration, with matching outfits and a cake shaped like her painting. The quiet in Claire's apartment was so complete it almost felt staged. No pings from her phone, no vibration from a text. Just the low hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak from the radiator, and the ticking of a wall clock that sounded louder than usual. She had dressed anyway, just in case. A soft navy sweater, the one she reserved for moments that felt like they should matter. She braided her hair, lit the candle on her desk for ambiance, and stared at her phone. 9:03 a.m., 10:41 a.m., 12:22 p.m. Nothing. She tried not to let it sting. She tried to remind herself that birthdays were just dates. Arbitrary. Manufactured meaning. She boiled water for tea, made a granola bar her cake, and stared out the window at the gray Saturday sky. At 3:13 p.m., her phone lit up. Emily. Claire hesitated, then picked up. Hey, Emily chirped. "Okay, listen. You have to see what Mom's planning for my birthday. We're doing a theme. Like, literally matching color palettes from my latest painting." "Isn't that insane?" Claire said nothing. And guess what? She found this bakery that can sculpt cakes into artwork. I sent them a picture of the broken bloom, and they're doing it in sponge and raspberry glaze. Claire swallowed. "Emily? What's up?" "It's my birthday today." The silence hit harder than expected. "Oh, my God. Wait. Are you serious?" Claire didn't answer. Emily let out a soft gasp. "Crap, I totally spaced. I thought yours was next week. I've been in planning mode and, I'm the worst. I'm so sorry, Claire." "It's okay," Claire said quietly. "I'll call you later, okay? I, I've got to finish this cake order. But really, happy birthday." The line went dead. Claire stared at her phone. Then she walked to the kitchen, grabbed a granola bar, and stuck a tea light candle into the top. She lit it, sat on the floor, and watched the flame dance. She didn't make a wish. As the sun sank behind the city skyline, the apartment dimmed. She didn't turn on the lights. At 8:47 p.m., a knock sounded on the door. She opened it to find Ethan holding a bag of takeout and a cheap bottle of wine. "No one forgets you on my watch," he said with a small, sincere smile. Claire stepped aside to let him in. She didn't cry, but her chest hurt with something heavy and unspeakable. Later, after he'd left, she opened her laptop, stared at the banking app. Remaining balance, $27.03. The cursor hovered over the automatic transfer. She didn't cancel it. She just closed the screen. I gave her a $12 photo frame and $48 cash. That was everything I had. Claire stood in the fluorescent-lit aisle of the discount store, gripping the thin metal frame in her hand. It was minimalist. Brushed silver with a matte border, but sturdy. She'd tested 3 others before this one, checking for scratches and price tags she couldn't peel off. It cost $11.99 before tax. She looked down at the cash in her wallet. $60. All of it. Her bank account had $2.83 left, and her next paycheck wouldn't hit for another 4 days. Still, she folded the remaining $48 into an envelope and tucked it behind a handwritten note. "For your supplies. Create something bold." Back at her apartment, she wrapped the gift in reused paper from an old birthday bag and sealed it with a piece of packing tape. No bow, no sticker. She wrote to Emily on the front in her neatest cursive and placed it gently by the door. She debated skipping the party. Ethan had texted that morning. "Wish I could be there to run interference." "You don't owe them anything, Claire." She replied, "I just don't want to give them another reason to talk." So she went. The Mitchells' backyard shimmered with fairy lights strung between poles and trees. Round tables had been rented, decorated with pastel tablecloths that matched one of Emily's color palettes. A canvas of her newest piece, The Quiet Bloom, stood on an easel beside the cake table, and a bar cart offered Prosecco and elderflower spritzers. Claire stepped through the gate and instantly became invisible. She helped restock the napkins. She cleared a spilled drink near the gift table. She handed out paper plates. Emily wore a white sundress with watercolor florals and a crown of faux lilies. She was glowing, surrounded by guests asking about her process. Carol hovered nearby with a camera. Thomas stood at the grill, flipping skewers and laughing too loud. Claire kept to the edges, watching the hour tick by. When it was time for presents, the guests gathered in a semicircle. Emily sat in a wicker chair with a flower garland hanging behind her, like a queen at a coronation. She unwrapped handmade jewelry from an aunt, a $300 Michaels gift card from Grandma June, a signed art book from a family friend, a luxury spa basket. Claire's gift came near the end. It was small, light, and not wrapped with flair. Emily opened it slowly. "Oh," she said, "this is sweet." She pulled out the frame, held it up. Smiles rippled through the group. Polite, thin. Then Thomas grabbed the envelope. "Let's see what the mystery amount is," he boomed. Claire's spine tensed. He opened the card, pulled out the folded bills, and frowned slightly. 60 cents? He said, blinking. "You gave 60 cents? A wave of awkward chuckles spread through the group. Someone coughed. A few eyes darted away. Claire turned pale. Her voice caught in her throat. "No," she said quietly. "That's not 60 cents. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "What?" "That's $60, Claire repeated, louder this time. "And for the past 3 years, I've sent $5,000 a month." The backyard fell into absolute silence. The only sound was the quiet snap of a candle wick being extinguished in the breeze. I said it loud. "I've been supporting this family." My mother said, "Stop lying to steal her spotlight." 30 pairs of eyes were on Claire, all blinking at once, some stunned, some skeptical, all unprepared. Claire's chest rose and fell with each breath as she stared at her father, who still held the crumpled envelope in one hand. The laughter had stopped. The smiles vanished like smoke. Only the awkward hum of the backyard lights remained. "I'm the one who's been sending money," she said again, louder. Every month. $5,000, not Emily. Thomas looked at her like she'd just admitted to murder. What are you talking about? I set up the transfers after your accident, Dad. I've been covering bills, groceries, utilities, everything. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind over dry grass. Claire pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. I can show you the transactions, every single one. Same account, same date, every month. Since 3 years ago. Carol stepped forward. Her face was taut, voice sharp enough to slice glass. Claire, enough. Claire turned toward her. You really think I'd lie about this? This is not about you, Carol snapped. Don't ruin your sister's party just because you're jealous. Claire's throat tightened. Jealous? Of what? Being erased? Living in a fantasy where someone else takes credit for everything I've sacrificed? She turned to Emily. Say something. Emily's hands trembled slightly where they rested on the gift table. She wouldn't meet Claire's gaze. Emily, Claire said again, voice cracking. Are you seriously going to let this happen? Emily's lips parted, but she didn't speak right away. Then, with a weak shrug, she muttered, I don't know what you're talking about. The betrayal landed like a slap. Claire stepped back as if struck. A chair behind her tipped slightly. No one moved to steady her. Grandma June rose from her seat slowly, clutching her purse with a puzzled frown. Is this really necessary? She asked softly, almost to no one. Claire scanned the crowd. Some guests looked away. Others just sipped their drinks awkwardly. Uncle Frank cleared his throat. Maybe we should get back to cake? Carol clapped her hands and said, Yes. Let's not dwell. Someone turned up the music. Conversations resumed, falsely cheerful and louder than before. Claire didn't say goodbye. She walked out of the backyard, past the glowing lights and pastel tablecloths, past the gate, down the sidewalk. When she got home, she kicked off her wet shoes and sat down on the floor. The laptop waited on the coffee table. She opened it, logged in. Automatic transfer, $5,000. Status, active, next scheduled date, May 15th. She hovered for a second, then clicked cancel. The screen blinked once. Transfer canceled. Claire leaned back against the wall. Her hands were shaking, but her breath finally came steady. They could have their lie. She would keep the truth. They didn't call. They didn't text. But the money missing from their account spoke louder than I ever had. Claire woke to quiet. Real quiet. No family group chat buzzing. No, can you send this week's early? From her mother. No passive-aggressive emojis from Carol layered over Emily's selfies. Just sunlight on her floorboards and the sound of birds outside. It had been 5 days since she canceled the transfer. She watered her plant, ate toast, took a long shower, no coupons, no budgeting app. She even splurged on a candle from the discount bin at the corner store. Small indulgences felt almost sacred. The silence stretched. Until day 7. Her phone rang twice from an unfamiliar number. She didn't answer. Later, the voicemail. Claire, it's your father. Something's wrong with our account. Can you call us? We're a little confused. Then another. Same tone, strained casualness masking something deeper. Hey, honey, Carol chimed in the next day. Can you take a look? Your dad said the automatic thing didn't come through. Not sure if it's a bank error. Claire stared at her phone, deleted the message. Her hands didn't shake this time. On the 10th day, Ethan showed up with groceries. No warning, just a bag in each arm and a knowing look on his face. You eating? He asked. Claire nodded. Sort of. They sat at her tiny table, unpacking cans and boxed pasta. He poured them each a mug of tea and finally said, I'm proud of you. For what? For choosing yourself. Claire let that sit. They talked for an hour, about his childhood, her burnout, about what it meant to draw a boundary and not flinch. It was the first time Claire didn't feel like she had to earn her place in the conversation. On day 12, her phone buzzed again. Emily, can we talk? Claire stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. A second ping followed a few hours later. Emily, I never sent them anything. Not once. I let them believe what they wanted. I'm sorry. Claire didn't reply. Not yet. That night, she lay in bed and slept straight through the night for the first time in months. Then came day 14. Her phone rang at 8:17 a.m. Thomas, Daddy. She let it go to voicemail, listened after. Claire, we know it was you. The bank confirmed it. Your mother and I, need to talk. Claire sat on the edge of her bed, staring out the window. She opened her messaging app, typed slowly, deliberately. Claire. Then talk, but don't expect me to fix it. And hit send. He said, we need the money. I said, you need the truth. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. Early evening quiet punctuated only by the hiss of the milk steamer. Claire arrived 5 minutes early and claimed a small corner table facing the window. She didn't buy anything. Let them pay for their own coffee this time. When Thomas and Carol arrived, they looked older, or maybe just smaller. The confidence they usually wore like armor had cracked. Carol clutched her purse tighter than necessary. Thomas glanced around as if he expected someone else to join them. Claire didn't stand. Thomas sat first, clearing his throat. Carol followed, smoothing her jacket and offering a strained smile. No pleasantries? She asked, attempting a light tone. Claire folded her hands. Let's not waste each other's time. A pause. Then Thomas leaned forward. We need the money. Claire didn't blink. You need the truth. They both stiffened. I have a question, she said. In 3 years, after thousands of dollars, did either of you ever stop to ask where it came from? Thomas's jaw tightened. You thought Emily was saving you? Because it made a prettier story. Claire cut in. Because that version let you sleep better at night. Carol exhaled sharply. You should have told us. Claire leaned in, number you never wanted to hear it. A beat of silence stretched between them. I'm willing to resume support, Claire said, but this time there are conditions. Thomas raised his eyebrows. Carol's lips parted. 1. Public acknowledgement. Not to me, about me. At the next family gathering, you will set the record straight. Claire, don't be dramatic. Carol started. 2. Equal treatment. No more favoritism. If you celebrate Emily's shows, you celebrate my promotions. If you post about her, you post about me too. Thomas looked like he wanted to speak, but Claire continued. 3. Emily contributes financially. She lives with you rent-free, eats your food, paints in the sunroom. That ends now. This is outrageous, Carol hissed. You're blackmailing your own parents. Claire's voice remained steady. I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm demanding respect. Thomas looked down at his coffee. Carol looked like she'd swallowed vinegar. I will help, Claire said, but never again in silence. She stood, pulled her coat tight, and turned toward the door. Think it over, she said without looking back. You know how to reach me. Outside, Ethan leaned against a street lamp, hands in his pockets, waiting. Claire didn't say a word as she approached, but her shoulders were higher than they'd been in years. When you pull the plug on a machine that runs on lies, it starts to smoke. The Mitchell house used to smell like fresh laundry and cinnamon potpourri. Now, the hallways were dimmer. The thermostat stayed lower. A small space heater buzzed in the living room while Carol rubbed her hands together, flipping through overdue bills. Thomas's construction boots sat by the door, still dusted in drywall. He hadn't worked a full week in months. His back had flared up again, and the job he'd picked up through a friend had docked his pay when he couldn't lift the heavier beams. Upstairs, Emily lay on her bed in a tangle of canvases and unopened mail. She stared at an email on her laptop screen for 20 minutes before clicking Submit. It was a job application. Junior design associate at a local firm. Not her dream, not even her backup. But it came with a salary. Carol had started taking on extra tutoring sessions, SAT prep, third grade math, even a last-minute call from a desperate parent needing grammar help for their 8th grader. She worked into the night, eyes strained, fingers cramped. At dinner, she barely spoke. And still, the mortgage notice on the fridge remained pink. Across town, Claire's new apartment wasn't much bigger than the last one, but it was hers, and she could afford it. The walls were freshly painted, pale green. A secondhand lamp glowed warmly beside a small reading chair. She kept a tiny succulent on the windowsill. It hadn't died yet. Ethan stopped by once or twice a week. On this particular visit, he held out a flyer he found in the mailbox. A Mitchell family barbecue. Postponed. Word's getting around, he said, leaning on the counter. Your aunt told her book club you cut your family off without warning. Claire gave a tight smile. I'm not surprised. And your mom's been calling people, Ethan added. Not asking for help, just dropping guilt. She nodded. I'm used to it. Later that evening, her phone buzzed. Grandma June. Claire hesitated, then picked up. Claire, her grandmother said softly, I don't know what's going on, but your mother is working herself to the bone. They're struggling. Why would you do this now? Claire closed her eyes. Because they never saw me. They raised you, Grandma said, emotion threading her voice. You're stronger than this. No, Claire replied, calm and firm. You taught me to be strong. This is what it looks like. There was silence on the line. That night, Claire didn't cry. She didn't doubt. She made tea, read a few pages of a novel, and went to bed early. For once, there were no midnight spirals. The next morning, her phone pinged. Emily. I got a job. I hate it, but I think I needed this. She said, It was never me. I just didn't want to disappoint them. The living room smelled like reheated soup and old lavender candles. Rain tapped against the windows, casting pale streaks down the glass. Claire sat on the edge of the couch, posture rigid, hands folded neatly in her lap. She hadn't been here in weeks, and somehow it felt both smaller and emptier. Thomas perched in his recliner, knees bouncing. Carol brought in mugs of tea but didn't touch hers. Emily sat near the fireplace, hugging a throw pillow to her chest. No one spoke at first. We're glad you came, Carol said finally, her voice attempting warmth. It sounded too careful. Claire nodded once but said nothing. Thomas cleared his throat. We thought it'd be good to clear the air. Claire looked straight ahead. The mantel above the fireplace still held framed photos of Emily in graduation robes at an art show, posing with a paintbrush. None of Claire. She waited a beat longer, then said, softly but clearly, Ask Emily. Thomas blinked. What? Claire turned slightly toward him. Ask Emily where the money came from. Carol looked to her daughter, confusion narrowing her brows. Emily fidgeted, picked at the edge of the pillow. Her voice was barely audible. I didn't send anything. Carol sat up straighter. What do you mean? Emily's lips trembled. I didn't send the money, not once. Silence. I knew, she added, eyes fixed on the floor. I knew it wasn't from me. I just didn't correct you. I liked how it felt, to be praised. I didn't want to disappoint you. Carol's mouth parted. Emily, I let you believe it because it was easier, Emily continued, voice cracking. But I knew it was Claire. I always knew. Thomas leaned back like someone had punched the wind out of him. His jaw worked, but no sound came. Carol's face lost its color. She looked between her daughters, shame creeping across her features for the first time. No one cried. No one shouted. Just rain and breathing. Claire stood slowly, adjusted her coat, picked up her umbrella from beside the door. This, she said quietly, is the price of silence. She opened the door, paused. Now you know. And left them in the stillness, Dad said, "We can't make rent." I said, "I can, but only with respect." The cafe was mostly empty, save for an older couple sipping chai by the window and a barista humming faintly to an indie track. Claire sat near the back, stirring her tea without drinking it. The autumn sun filtered in low through the blinds, streaking her table in golden stripes. Thomas and Carol arrived 2 minutes late. He looked older than she remembered. Shirt wrinkled, eyes tired. Carol's makeup was slightly smudged, as if she'd applied it in the car. They didn't order anything. Claire gestured to the 2 empty chairs. "Sit." Thomas didn't waste time. "We can't make rent this month." Claire looked him in the eye. "I can help, but only with respect." Carol flinched, lips parting as if to protest. Claire raised a hand. Calm, not confrontational. "These are my terms, same as before. 1, public acknowledgement. 2, equal treatment. 3, Emily contributes, non-negotiable." Carol scoffed. "That sounds transactional." Claire tilted her head. "Number it's clarity. For once." Thomas stayed quiet. Claire pulled out a folded paper and slid it across the table. 3-month bridge plan. I'll cover what you need to stay afloat. But after that, you're rebuilding without me. Understood? Carol looked like she wanted to argue again, but something in Claire's voice, measured, resolute, made her stop. Thomas picked up the paper. "You're really not the girl we raised." Claire gave a small smile. "Number I raised myself." She stood, tucked her chair back in without a sound. Outside, Ethan was waiting beside his car, one hand tucked into his coat pocket. His expression said he already knew the answer. "How did it go?" he asked. Claire opened the passenger door, paused. "I finally spoke," she said. They had no choice but to listen. Dad stood up and said, "Before we eat, I need to apologize to my daughter." The backyard looked almost identical to how it had been months ago. The folding tables draped in red, white, and blue, the smell of grilled ribs drifting through the warm July air, kids darting between legs with sparklers in hand. But the energy was different. The laughter more cautious, the glances more curious. Claire stood near the drinks table, sipping lemonade slowly, her back to the crowd. Ethan was beside her, his hand gently grazing the small of her back. She hadn't told him what to expect, only that it was time. Emily stood beneath the patio string lights, unusually quiet, her arms crossed over her midsection like armor. Thomas and Carol moved through the guests with practiced smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Uncle Frank slapped someone on the back too loudly. Grandma June sat perched in a patio chair with her arms folded tightly and a tissue clenched in her hand. Dinner was about to be served when Thomas stepped forward. The chatter dimmed as he cleared his throat. "If I could have everyone's attention," he began, voice steady but not loud. "Before we eat, I need to apologize to my daughter." Silence fell. Claire didn't move. Thomas looked directly at her. "Several months ago at Emily's birthday party, I humiliated Claire. I assumed something. And I was wrong. We were all wrong." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Aunt Carol lowered her drink. Uncle Frank blinked at the grill. Thomas continued. "For 3 years, Claire supported this family. Quietly, completely. We thought—" He swallowed. "We thought it was someone else. We never asked. We never noticed." Carol stepped up beside him. "We owe Claire more than an apology. We owe her respect. And acknowledgement. That starts today." Claire felt dozens of eyes turning toward her. Some guests looked stunned. Others, like Cousin Riley and Grandma June, appeared more ashamed than surprised. No one clapped. No one cheered. But there was a collective shift, subtle but real. The center of gravity had changed. Claire nodded once. That was all. She didn't cry. She didn't make a speech. But when she turned, Ethan leaned in and said softly, "You're not invisible anymore." I still sent the money, but this time they had to tell me what it was for. Claire sat at her kitchen table, sunlight pouring through sheer curtains and lighting the stack of bills she'd finally had time to pay. Her own bills. The apartment was still modest, but brighter now, filled with small comforts she'd denied herself for years. A real bookshelf, a fresh orchid by the window, a secondhand rug in the color she'd loved since college. Her laptop pinged. A video call was waiting. She answered. Thomas and Carol appeared on screen, seated on their couch with a notepad between them. It wasn't the usual aimless chat. They looked prepared. "Hi, sweetheart," Carol said, sounding careful, not syrupy. Claire nodded. "Hi." Thomas adjusted his glasses. "We got the transfer. Thank you. We've prepared a breakdown, utilities, overdue credit card, and part of the roof repair." He held up the sheet of paper like a student at a presentation. Claire scanned the list. It was handwritten, meticulous, even highlighted. "Good," she said. "That's how it's going to work from now on. No assumptions. No mystery." Carol nodded. "We understand." Claire didn't smile, but her chest loosened just slightly. Emily appeared briefly behind them, leaning into the frame. "I sent $800 this morning," she said. "It's not easy, but I'm doing it." Claire gave her a small nod. "That's good." Later, after the call ended, she sank into the couch beside Ethan. He handed her a mug of chamomile tea. "You okay?" he asked. Claire shrugged. "They're still them, but it's different now." He raised an eyebrow. "It's support," she added, "not sacrifice." Her phone buzzed. A message from Carol. "Thank you, Claire. For real this time." Claire stared at it for a moment, then whispered to herself, "I think they're finally seeing me." She used to say she needed space to create. Now she sets alarms at 6 a.m. Claire arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early and chose a corner table by the window. The place was half full. Clinks of cups, murmurs of laptops, the low hum of a playlist trying not to be noticed. She wrapped her fingers around a warm mug and waited. Emily showed up on time. No floaty scarves or art-stained fingers this time. Just a plain navy sweater, under-eye circles, and hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked real. "Sorry," Emily muttered, sliding into the seat across from Claire. "I had to finish edits for a client who thinks magenta and red are the same color." Claire smirked. "You're learning." Emily exhaled, rubbed her temples. "Clients suck. Deadlines suck more. And whoever invented urgent revisions at 10 p.m. deserves, I don't know, creative purgatory." Claire sipped her coffee. "You'll survive." A beat passed. Emily looked out the window. "You're not going to say, 'I told you so'?" "I'm not here to gloat," Claire said. "You're doing the work. That matters." Emily's voice dropped. "I'm sorry I let them take your name off everything." Claire's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "You let it happen because it was easier." Emily nodded slowly. "Yeah, because I needed the praise. You never seemed to." "That doesn't mean I didn't want it," Claire said. "I know that now." Claire watched her sister's hands, fidgeting with a napkin, twisting it tighter and tighter. Emily reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and tapped a few times. A notification buzzed on Claire's screen. "Transfer received. From Emily Mitchell, public, labeled, no hiding." "I figure," Emily said softly, "if I'm helping now, I should at least sign my name to it." Claire didn't respond right away, but she didn't look away either. "For the first time in 5 years, I booked a weekend trip. For myself." Claire zipped up her carry-on with a quiet finality that felt ceremonial. The apartment around her buzzed with an energy she didn't recognize. Freedom. A small suitcase by the door, a new paperback tucked beside sunscreen, her passport resting on the counter under morning light. No guilt, no mental checklist of who might need her. Just departure. "You packed the book I lent you?" Ethan asked, leaning against the kitchen door frame with a smile. She lifted the front pocket of her bag slightly. Right on top. He grinned. This is what freedom looks like. Claire laughed. I think it suits me. On the way to the airport, Ethan played music she used to love, songs she hadn't let herself listen to in years. At the terminal, he kissed her cheek and said, No emails, no guilt, just joy. Promise? She nodded. Promise. Mid-flight, somewhere above the Midwest, Claire glanced out at the clouds and let her phone buzz. A text from Carol. Take care and enjoy yourself. You deserve this. Another one from Emily. A gif of a beach chair unfolding beside a calm ocean. No words, no hint of obligation. Claire exhaled softly, her shoulders relaxing as if releasing years of tension one breath at a time. She landed late afternoon, the ocean air warm against her face. Standing outside the airport, she opened Instagram and posted a photo Ethan had taken earlier. Her, laughing mid-turn, hair caught in the wind. Caption: Learning how to take up space. As she waited for her ride, her phone buzzed again. Ethan, you're finally living. What's next? Claire smiled, not just because of the question, but because for once the answer was hers to decide. For the first time in years, I said, next month the support ends. And no one argued. The morning light spilled across Claire's kitchen table as she wrapped both hands around her mug. No rush. No calendar alerts barking in her ear. Just quiet, warm coffee and a calm she'd learned to protect. Her laptop hummed beside her, emails blinking silently, none urgent enough to steal this moment. She dialed her parents. Thomas answered. Claire, we were just talking about... I wanted to talk about the monthly support. Claire said gently, her voice steady. Starting next month, I'll reduce it. And in 3 months, I'll stop completely. A pause. Not the kind that preceded a storm, but the kind that came after one had passed. We figured that might happen, her dad said. I actually picked up steady hours again, back with Johnson's team. Not easy, but steady. Claire smiled to herself. That's good to hear. Carol came on the line next. I've cut back tutoring, not because we're sinking, but because we're not anymore. Her voice softened. We're doing okay, Claire, and it's time you gotta breathe. Claire leaned back in her chair, blinking slowly. You really mean that? We do, Carol said. And we should have known you were this strong a long time ago. Claire didn't reply right away. A lump had caught in her throat. Not pain, not sadness, just the fragile weight of finally being seen. After the call, Claire stood at the window for a long while, watching the clouds shift across a late spring sky. No noise, no guilt. Just movement. Forward. Her laptop pinged with a new email. Subject: Promotion offer, Regional Strategy Lead. She didn't open it right away. She just smiled, knowing she would. And that for once, the only voice she needed to consult was her own. Emily was awarded Emerging Artist of the Year. I was promoted to Regional Lead. Only one of us needed applause. The livestream played quietly in the background, sunlight catching on my half-packed boxes. On screen, Emily stood poised in a crimson gown, holding her award with the same confidence she used to borrow from me. I remembered the sting I would have felt once, the twist in my gut that always came when they cheered for her and looked through me. But today, I just smiled. Not bitter, not envious, just peaceful. I clicked the tab closed and finished folding the last of my notebooks into the cardboard box. There were no farewell cakes, no grand send-off. Just the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint scent of lemon from the cleaner who just passed by. Still, the quiet felt right. It matched the stillness inside me. The door creaked open. You ready? Ethan leaned against the frame, his tie askew, holding up his phone. Thought I'd snap one last pic of you here, for old time's sake. I laughed softly. Might as well. This desk saw a lot. He took the photo as I smiled. Really smiled. No pretending, no bracing. He picked up the box while I grabbed my bag. Together, we walked the short hallway that once felt like a runway of judgment. Today, it felt like closure. My new office was just down the corridor, but it might as well have been in a different world. It was bigger. Yes, brighter. But what hit me first was the window. Massive. Clear. The city buzzed beneath, but in here, all was calm. I walked in, placed my bag on the new desk, and exhaled like I hadn't in years. I ran my hand across the clean surface. No coffee stains, no tears buried beneath papers. Just space. For me. My phone buzzed. Emily. I wouldn't be here if you hadn't been so invisible back then. Thank you, I read it twice. Then again. Not because I needed to believe it, but because it didn't hurt. I typed back. It's okay. I see myself now. And I did. I wasn't the shadow behind the golden girl anymore. I wasn't the convenient caretaker, the fallback plan, or the invisible foundation propping everyone else up. I was Claire, leader, creator. Enough. No ceremony. No applause. Just this. A sunrise outside my window, a fresh desk waiting for its first mark, and a warm drink in my hand that I didn't forget to sip. Some victories aren't loud. They're quiet mornings, full plates, and knowing you're finally enough. There was a time when Claire's silence made others shine. But after years of being sidelined, she reclaimed her place. Not with noise, but with quiet power. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes it only takes one brave step away from validation to finally walk toward self-worth. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.